Well, hello again, and it's that time of year already.
Seriously, how did we get here so fast, Andrew? For our special holiday edition, we thought let's kick back, unwrap a little nostalgia, and revisit some of the conversations and themes that hooked us throughout 2025. Today we're unwrapping a double delight. Charles Banks from The Food People will be here with a sneak preview of some of the flavors and trends set to shake up 2026. And MMR's Christine Barnagaud will be sprinkling the studio with some pure gingerbread magic.
So I'm excited to hear Charles's take on trends. It can't be denied, can it, that trends keep categories feeling alive. But honestly, this trend window seems to be shrinking faster. You dare not blink these days. And personally, I blame Shania from the Together agency for all this chaos. She'll be joining us with her predictions for the TikTok trend cycles that will be bossing us around for the next few months. And finally, in a twist that even we didn't see coming, our producer Alex has been granted an actual speaking part to share his favourite moment of the year.
And before all of that, we have a quick announcement. This is the point in the year when the Cultural Commentary Machine unveils its Words of the Year. So we thought, why not shamelessly join in? Let's broadcast our very own Impact Maker's Word of the Year.
Yes, this is a big moment, Caitlin, and we shouldn't make light of it. The Impact Maker's Word of the Year 2025 is intentional.
Woohoo! Cue confetti cannons that I really wish we had in studio.
Yeah, one day we'll get a budget, Caitlin. But yes, intentional. So it's the thread running through almost every category right now, and people are making choices with far more clarity of purpose. They're looking for products that, support their physical and emotional well-being, enhance their daily performance, or even match their personal values, and genuinely add some sort of meaning or ease to their daily routines.
And that intention can only intensify further. Product experiences will have to evolve accordingly, not only in functional delivery, but in the full sensory architecture around a product. We covered this last episode. Intentionally designed product soundscapes can shift perceived efficacy and quality in meaningful ways.
As our industry makes some very loud statements about where it thinks future growth will come from, witness all of the mergers and acquisitions that we've had over the last 12 months. Take Kimberly-Clark's move on Kenvue. It's a big bet on health and wellness, isn't it? And it's blending personal care with OTC-style credibility.
Totally. It's about owning the whole health management at home frontier.
Then, of course, we've got Mars swinging for Kellanova, and that is a definite play on global snacking dominance.
Yes, it's swavery at scale. Mars brings the sweet, Kellanova brings the salty, and together they own the high-repeat, daily habit moments.
And we just had the curveball when Ferrero moved on WK Kellogg.
Absolutely nobody had that on their bingo card. Ferrero is basically buying its way into North American mornings. New reach, new day parts, new margins.
And I think this points to something far more seismic, because AI is about to hijack everyday shopping behavior. A lot of people seem weirdly fine with handing over their grocery lists to algorithms. So, if AI agents are increasingly in charge of our baskets, how do brands ensure that they are the ones that AI automatically picks, the default, if you like? Now, to earn that spot, you're going to need authority. You need to own a moment so clearly, so consistently, that the algorithm sees you as the default.
Sounds like we already have our word of the year for 2026. But what you're suggesting could open the door to some seriously unconventional M&A. Brands won't just buy categories anymore. They'll be building portfolios that dominate states of being. That could be calm, focus, anti-anxiety, and so on. If AI starts curating our emotional needs as much as our functional ones, then the race will be to own moods that matter the most. Now, before we go any further, we want to thank all our new subscribers. That small act means we can reach more product-obsessed people just like you. And in news just in, our previous Breaking the Sound Barrier has broken all records for being our fastest downloaded episode in its first 7 days. But our most streamed episode of the year by some distance is Adapting to Ozempic, the one where we tried to unravel the GLP-1 juggernaut. Faris Zurikat from the Irving Medical Center at Columbia University got the conversation going by explaining how these weight management drugs appear to work.
All of these medications, you've probably heard Ozempic, Wegovy, tirzepatide, they're all similar in that they have this GLP-1 backbone, a hormone that is produced naturally in our body, and it's involved in inhibiting food intake. But really, GLP-1's primary action in the body is to improve blood sugar. In the presence of glucose, or once we've eaten a food that has carbohydrate, it's actually helping the pancreas secrete insulin so that we can get the glucose into those cells. And indeed, that's where these medications were born from, is actually for the treatment of type 2 diabetes. And it was sort of a serendipitous finding that these individuals who had type 2 diabetes often had the comorbidity of obesity. They were being treated with these GLP-1 receptor agonists, again, to improve blood sugar control. Many of them were losing weight and anecdotally reporting suppression of appetite or increased satiety. And I think that's really what has now stimulated this really boom of research into using these GLP-1 receptor agonist-based medications specifically for the treatment of obesity.
And do we know whether the impact of these drugs is purely physical? I'm thinking here about the suppression of appetite, or is there something else at work here?
I think, in fact, it's probably more neurological than it is physical. So obviously, we hear a lot of reports and there's a lot of data showing a large proportion of individuals being treated with these medications experience gastrointestinal discomfort, particularly nausea, which would lead people to postulate that these are really more physical effects. Indeed, nausea is a part of satiety. It's a part of the satiety cascade. And that's probably one mechanism by which they are reducing food intake. But interestingly, these drugs, the GLP-1 receptor agonists, are really acting on reward regions of the brain, right? They have very well-defined neural circuitry to really enhance satiety and suppress appetite and potentially even shift the desirability of certain foods. Even there's some data showing that the nausea that people are feeling is emanating from the brain, right? It seems to be really acting on the brain and the central nervous system primarily.
So here we are almost a year later, and the truth is, no one really knows how this GLP-1 story is going to play out. The fact that we now know that GLP-1s can potentially improve outcomes for over 40 health conditions suggests that these drugs could become far more accessible. But at the same time, we've got rising costs of these medications, particularly outside of the US, and we have scarce stories of side effects. I mean, recently we've had Robbie Williams claim that GLP-1s are affecting his vision. So there are concerns, but consumer behavior is shifting and brands are responding. So in the last few weeks, we've seen Lactalis drop the ratio pro fiber range in the US, 10 grams of fiber, 20 grams of protein. And Naked Smoothies, they've released a GLP-1 aligned range, 9 grams of fiber, 20 grams of protein, 45% less sugar.
But here's the risk. GLP-1 incidence is still very low, around 2.5% of the UK population, near 5% here in the States. So it's important that brands get their story right, or they'll alienate the much bigger majority who aren't taking these drugs. Far better to message around smart nourishment, nutrient density, and focused fuel than GLP-1 friendly, perhaps. The great news is that those claims around protein and fiber also top the charts for the wider population. This we learned in our episode, The Shape of Health to Come.
Yeah, one of those rare examples of serendipity there. But when I listen back to the episode, I really wonder how much our industry is paying attention to the neurological impacts of GLP-1s. So they don't just suppress appetite, they suppress motivation. So it isn't just about adjusting portion sizes or boosting protein and fiber. It's also about how brands, I think, increase their emotional ties with consumers so they offset falls in liking and overall appeal. Let's have a listen.
The mechanisms are not fully untangled, but it's worth noting that sort of the GLP-1 receptor agonists do act on the dopaminergic system. So we think about dopamine as this sort of pleasure-promoting hormone. And, certainly GLP-1 binding to its receptors in the brain has downstream effects on dopamine signaling and GABA signaling. And so this could help to explain why we see some of that reduced motivation or drive for foods and beverages like alcohol that are typically providing a really rewarding response. Again, this speaks to the central actions of these medications. And this could be really positive things. We see reduced cravings for high fat, high sugar foods, for instance. We see data demonstrating that alcohol intake is reduced while individuals are using these medications. And I do think that this presents a really nice opportunity to improve these behaviors and build healthful patterns, if you will, and to really kind of build an education around this in hopes of sustaining, right, these favorable behavior changes, maybe even after the cessation of treatment. So certainly I do see this as a window of opportunity, and it's an opportunity that's made possible by the really central effects of these GLP-1 receptor agonists.
Many of our guests in 2025 spoke from the position of the challenger, the underdog, and the reality checker. Nikki Clark, founder of Re-Nourish, the soup brand in the UK, ticked all three boxes.
Nikki, we love you. Yes, we really did love having you on. And here she is talking about ultra-processed foods.
We have to take responsibility for our health, but there seems to be a disconnect, I think, with our head and what goes into our bodies. People have to take more responsibility. We are where we are with obesity because of the food chain. Everywhere in the supermarkets is row upon row upon row of ultra-processed, high-sugary foods that make us fat. We have lost, I think, our minds really in what is healthy.
Now, if anyone thought the whole UPF debate would fade away, they will have been silenced very recently with The Lancet's recent interventions. So it's just published a large synthesis of a number of other major studies, and they are very blunt about it, indicating that a handful of global corporations now shape half the calories that many households eat, and their political power is blocking meaningful change, their words. Its editorial is now calling for front-of-pack warnings, taxes, further marketing bans, and shifts away from industry self-regulation. Part of the industry's problem, I think, is this perpetual obsession with liking scores. So I remember a TV documentary presented by Chris Van Teleken. So he's the author of Highly Processed People. And he suggested that the whole of the food and beverage industry, supported by market researchers, has got us here with this relentless pursuit of ever higher liking scores. And I'll be honest, it was quite an uncomfortable watch.
Right, because despite its many flaws, liking still rules decision-making. But with GLP-1s making some foods less appealing, less liked, should manufacturers finally look beyond liking and start valuing the wider product experience? That's sensorial cues, emotional impacts, the whole package.
One of my favourite interviews was with Leo Campbell, and he's founder of Superloaf. He was clearly frustrated about the lack of constructive thinking around the UPF debate, pointing out that removing UPF from the shelves will inevitably spark a massive hike in food prices, leading to potential collapse of civil society. And yet, buried in our conversation with Leo, we stumbled upon something highly significant: innate nutritional intelligence.
We've just done a study with Bristol University, their consumer labs, backed by the BBSRC, who are a funding body, where we've used smart vending machines. And we placed 2 cookies in these smart vending machines, and the recipients knew nothing about what was going on, not even that it was about nutrition. One with our intervention in it and one without.
When you say your intervention, what was your intervention?
So I referred earlier to the fact that 15% of Superloaf is a blend of ingredients that is of our design.
Okay. And you'd applied it to a cookie format in one of these vending machines?
That's correct.
Right.
And there's all sorts of stuff that's emerged from it. It was absolutely fascinating. But the key statistic there is that after the 6th cookie that people had, there started to be a divergence of sort of opinions about the product. And the ones with the intervention that was clearly demonstrably much healthier for them started to show a much greater preference for saying, I would buy this, and the sense that definitely satiety was something they were experiencing, but also their intention to buy and their preference in taste, whereas these were essentially identical.
And was there any explanation as to why people were developing that affinity to the healthier option?
Well, the hypothesis at the moment, because we haven't got enough data, but we are going back this summer to do a much bigger scale test, is that there's some innate knowledge in the human being about what's good for you. So bearing in mind that these people are eating a completely different set of fibers, a very high in bioactive compound product, so that's polyphenols and things like that had further been fermented, this is what's in our blend, to amplify all of these benefits.
So what you're telling me almost is that the consumer's behavior is being affected by some sort of physiological response to the nutrition that's being digested through this superior cookie.
Well, that's certainly the hypothesis that's emerging from this trial, that humans have a kind of innate nutritional awareness, and therefore they are preferring and prioritizing something without knowing it that is more nutritious.
Turns out that researchers at Bristol University previously investigated the possibility that humans may subconsciously be predisposed to foods that offer superior nutritional value. So fear that a brand will lose share if it adopts a much healthier profile might just be turned on its head.
Okay, so in these times of everything, everywhere, all at once, it's probably more important than ever that we take time to check in with what's coming next. So I am delighted to welcome Charles Banks, partner and MD of TheFoodPeople. Charles, hello.
Hi, Andy. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Cool. And give us an idea of how TheFoodPeople decides what's next.
No, that's brilliant. It's a great question, great place to start. I mean, at TheFoodPeople, the first thing to say is deciding on what's next is definitely not a guessing game. It's a honed process that we've developed over some 20 years, actually. It's our 20th anniversary in January. And it's really a space, it's quite a milestone where global intelligence meets human wisdom. That's how we describe what we do to deliver something else that we coin and frame, which is predictive clarity, I guess. We spend over, and this is still staggering every time I talk about it, over 26,000 hours a year analysing literally millions of data points from across the globe. Social, cultural, consumer, product, industry signals. But I think what makes it a little bit different in terms of what we do with that intelligence, it's the point where all of that information meets our team. You know, we've got chefs and psychologists and anthropologists, product developers and marketeers. So it's not just about reporting on what's happening, but really interrogating the why. It's certainly our belief if you can get beneath the skin of what's happening, you can develop more emotionally engaging, propositions and products and services. And that's certainly our view. And that the marriage of those two things, human wisdom and global intelligence, I think is where the magic happens, really.
Well, look, I'd like to start off by getting your thoughts on something, because I was reading an article this morning from Food Navigator. It was talking about the so-called better for you megatrend, which, TheFoodPeople and many other bodies have been talking about for years now, and it is starting to feel obsolete. So every other week, a new example seems to land. And in this article, it was talking about Urban Legend, which is the donut brand that engineered extraordinary reductions in fat and sugar, secured that Mondelez minority stake. That's just gone under. We've had the JNCK Bakery. They created these very low sugar cookies, got listings in Tesco's, but they went into liquidation in September. These were all technically brilliant products, but I think the truth that seems to be emerging here is that inherently indulgent categories, better for you doesn't seem to cut it, does it? Because people are always going to compare you to the real thing, and the real thing usually wins. Isn't it time, Charles, that we finally declared this sort of better for you trend a dodo?
Well, as this really interesting observation, and I think to an extent you're right, but the aspiration for health and well-being clearly is very much alive. But I think what is fading is this idea that health can be delivered through some kind of compromise.
Yeah.
The old better for you model, I guess, that we're talking about, where indulgent formats are perhaps re-engineered to be marginally less sinful, just doesn't resonate anymore, especially in categories where, using the donut example, kind of pleasure is the point, really. You can't win by offering a 30% better for you donut if the benchmark is joy and emotional satisfaction.
Yeah.
So I would definitely acknowledge that. I think what we're seeing emerge instead is, and this I guess is where potentially the real growth lies, is a move toward sort of health positive originals. You know, products built with intention, I suppose, from the ground up, that don't live in the shadow of something else. And these are formats that develop their own rituals, their own cues of value, and increasingly, their own communities that are engaged with them. And they earn their health halo not by subtraction, but by design, whether that's perhaps, I don't know, things like smart portioning or tech-enabled functionality or a radically different sensory experience. And one of, you might have joined our annual Trend Summit, and we were talking about themes around slim and trim and you are what you eat, and trends that are pointing to not less of the bad, but more of the purpose built in, if you like. And I think that's the new frontier.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Charles. I just felt that it was important that we acknowledge this story, and I think what you're saying is completely right. This idea of health first originals is probably where manufacturers should be spending more of their time. Yeah. Okay. What else should we be looking ahead to? You mentioned your annual Trends event, so give us the best bits.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a huge amount to talk about. And I suppose the big one, which was number one in our top 10, was around GLP-1 and that how that has moved from the margins to the mainstream. And, we've had this on the pad for a few years. I think it's the pace of acceleration, I think, that's been particularly stark in that particular case. And it's not just reshaping health behaviors, but the way we think about food itself. And yes, we've already, we've talked a lot in the past about portion control and protein and fiber and those types of things. But this story is moving fast and innovation really has to keep up. And on the pharma side, the pipeline is set to deliver, more powerful, more user-friendly solutions, pills instead of injections, and crucially options, I think, that, address some of the challenges. So options that, around reducing the issues around reduced muscle mass. But I think the bigger opportunity for food lies in what we call this sort of the new normal of quiet hunger, smaller portions, snackified formats, protein, fiber pairings, that type of thing. And for me, there are a number of different innovation areas to focus on. I think first, designing for satiety and not just slimming, I think it's really important. Thinking about AM and PM snack formats, about weight maintenance post initial GLP-1 use. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
staying inclusive. So it's not just about GLP-1 users, products that help people feel full and focused and fuel appeal to a much broader audience. So from, active wellness seekers or active agers, but also to busy parents as well. There's a whole thing emerging around natural alternatives to GLP-1 as well. As GLP-1 gains visibility, consumers are beginning to understand and seek out foods that support that sort of appetite regulation. Avocado, oats, olive oil, pistachios, all of those sort of starting to gain some traction.
Okay.
And then there's a whole piece about formats as well. So portion control packs and snack kits and those types of things as well. So I think there's lots of opportunity around GLP-1, a super exciting space that is developing very, very fast. And I think it almost from an industry point of view demands continuous adaptation, really.
Good. And what else have you got in the cupboard, Charles? There must be some more, please.
There's some more goodies in there. I suppose the first thing to say, we've talked, we started off by talking about, health and wellness, and then we talked about GLP-1. I think the first thing to say is the rise of these things doesn't kill the joy of eating. If anything, perhaps reframes it. And yes, we're seeing a shift in how people eat and, portions and more considered choices, but that doesn't mean that joy disappears. In fact, I think the need for food to provide emotional nourishment is more relevant than ever before. And that's, again, why one of our top 10 predictions was what we call food therapy. And we're talking about food that soothes and food that cheers us up and food that gives us a moment of comfort and delight, whether that's a playful treat or a nostalgic pudding. So things like all-day desserts, retro rice pudding, frozen rice pudding, banana pudding, that kind of thing. That's sort of that hug in an edible form. And they're not just about indulgences. Those sort of micro moments of mental health support sit in this space as well.
Yeah.
We've got a trend that we talked about called snack tales, which is another trend, I suppose, that proves that joy is still alive and well. That sort of snacking culture leveling up. It's not about basic bites here, loaded toast and top focaccias and gourmet crumpets and hybrid croissant and all that kind of thing. Wow. Particularly in a time where, and I know nobody wants to talk about it, but there's still cost of living pressures. Snack formats are becoming the main meals, comforting, creative, a bit more of a treat too. And we've got one that we call bread and batter, which, for all the carb lovers out there, this is actually the one for you. This trend is all about celebrating the versatility and emotional power, I think, of carbs. It's also budget friendly as well.
Yeah.
And endlessly adaptable, things like French toast and waffles and loads more crepes and loaded pancakes and those types of things.
Okay. What's happening on the sustainability front? So we know that food waste is a big problem, responsible for 8 to 10% of all human-caused greenhouse gas emissions. I found out the other day that this is the equivalent to all of the CO2s created by global aviation.
Yeah, I think that stat alone tells us that this isn't just a sustainability issue, it's a climate crisis, and the food industry is starting to step up in smart and innovative ways. One of the pillars around our 26-27 predictions was around keeping it fresh, and particularly relevant in the stat you've just mentioned about waste. A wave of innovation focused around preventing waste before it happens. It's about optimizing freshness and extending shelf life, but using science and sort of smart design and technology for that. So, for instance, seeing a new generation of antimicrobial and oxygen regulating packaging, smart sensors that detect spoilage, and even edible coatings that release antioxidants to slow down the decay. And then we had another one that we called Edit and Enhance, which explores how gene editing, albeit in its infancy, and sort of bioengineering are being used to optimize our food at source. So think about bananas that don't go brown, or grains with improved nutrition and shelf life. It's not about unnatural manipulation, but perhaps nature enhanced, I suppose.
Yeah.
But all geared around reducing waste and increasing resilience and ultimately feeding more people with fewer resources.
Yeah. Well, look, lots to think about. If there are some innovators tuning in and they want to get closer to some of these trends, how can they do that, Charles?
First and foremost, you can catch up on some of the things that we're talking about here. We recently had our Trend Summit, so very soon in the new year, we'll be releasing all of those talks and those presentations onto our YouTube channel. But if you want to get even closer to that, just reach out to us, TheFoodPeople.co.uk, and we can talk to you more about what we do, how we do it, trends, trend hub, all that kind of thing. Just get in touch.
Thank you, Charles. And one more thing. I was reading the other day on the Beverage Daily website that 2026 is going to be the year of the pineapple. Now, do you agree?
It's a brilliant question, and it's certainly we have called out pineapple amongst a lot of other ingredients in our kind of annual trend prediction. So that's reassuring. I suppose I'd step back a little bit and just look at this one. When we look at the broader landscape of kind of consumer behavior, we see a shift towards intentionality across the board when we eat and drink and buy, and even how we socialize. And pineapple, to bring it right down to the micro ingredient, with all its kind of tropical brightness and mood lifting qualities, happens to align perfectly with several of the things that we're kind of talking about. One that we call My New Reality, which is actually our kind of global driver, defined by people reassessing how they live and spend money. And there's a nostalgic element to that. There's a having fun element. And pineapple, emotional connection, joy, escape. It plays into that culinary smile, how people absolutely, still looking for those things. Pineapple, it may well become a cultural signal of joyful intention. It certainly fits within our predictions.
All trends converge at pineapple.
Indeed.
You heard it here first. Thank you, Charles. Great to talk to you.
It's a great pleasure, Andy.
Thank you.
Over the course of 2025, we've been lucky enough to kick back with some of the big hitters of CPG: L'Oreal, Heineken, Mondelez, Ehrenberg Bass. One of my favorite moments was when I sat down with Coca-Cola to explore the emergence of modern soda. Here I am speaking with Monserrate as the company rolled out its entry into the gut health space across North America. So let's talk about the meteoric rise of modern soda. This has obviously been escalated recently by Walmart, who are making space for it in more than 4,300 stores. What does this say about consumers and their changing needs?
I think that this confirms the ever-evolving nature of human being. We are always looking for ways to discover things, to experience new, I will call them episodes in life, especially thinking about the younger generations, just influencing the intentional lookout for health aiding, yes, but also like propositions that bring novelty into their lives. So these products combining great taste with added benefits just aligns to consumers' needs of today. And then talking specifically about beverages and Walmart escalating like this modern soda has come to open the door to new occasions for enjoying beverages, but also allows us to offer products that align with these ever-evolving preferences. I would say, like, if I had to summarize it in a sentence, I see this just as an evolution.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we covered this on one of our earlier podcasts, the discovery era. Consumers are definitely looking for new and unique experiences and looking to really expand their horizons when it comes to products. I think alongside that evolution, we seem to have a more intentional consumer segment arising. So those that don't necessarily want to give up their daily delights, but they also want to feel a bit more virtuous in their choices. So it seems like these consumers are looking for something that's great tasting and refreshing, but also functionally beneficial. So not surprising that it seems like Gen Z is kind of clinging to this most tightly. How has this played into your considerations for innovation in the space?
I think it has been key to decide like the best path to follow. I would say that we have seen like over the time, if we go back like historically, how generations come influencing the younger generations. And then we do learn like from the past, but also do learn from the future, like upcoming generations. Okay. So in that sense, I would say that Gen Z have definitely influenced the way in which we designed our product, but not only designed our product, but also like chose the best path to move forward.
Wonderful to see Coca-Cola adding further intention to modern soda.
I mean, the pace at which that category has formed should be like a flashing neon sign for other potential developments around the store. interesting as well in your interview to hear about Gen Z's oversized role in building this product.
Thank you. I rest my case.
Hello, Shania. Glad you could join us. How are Gen Z? We often hear how much pressure they're under.
Especially financially, but this could change. McKinsey's latest State of the Consumer report predicts that Gen Z are set to be the wealthiest generation in history, and that their priorities already shifting from price to value, which could affect how these AI agents make their choices. Because, let's face it, Gen Z will be the first in line to outsource routine shopping missions to AI. And when that happens, brands will need to be known for something clear, like the best value mascara, or the bot won't pick you.
It's a curious one because value is very subjective. However, I think we already know from the Z-Factor output what this generation does value. Those multi-sensory moments that increase perception of an experience.
Yep, products that deliver some kind of elevated experience automatically feel more valuable. And that ties into what PwC has termed affordable affluence. Brands like The Ordinary and Blank Street Coffee, with its clean aesthetic and colourful serves, nail this vibe.
So what was your standout moment of 2025, Shania?
Probably the most significant moment for me was the news that Unilever was siphoning off half of its entire comms budget to put behind a vastly expanded estate of creators and influencers. It's highly likely that this move will prompt other big players to do the same. But this podcast raised a warning about this kind of strategy during our last episode, when Gen Z panelist Polly Dawson made the observation that TikTok is turning into the modern equivalent of a shopping channel.
Could this be a reckoning point for TikTok?
It could be. In my work for the Together agency, working with brands seeking to connect with audiences on the platform, I am increasingly mindful that people are getting exhausted by hyper-polished, transactional influencer content that feels nothing like real life. So some are now suggesting we're seeing the death of the influencer. Check this out.
I think the first wave of the death of the influencer came when influencer marketing popped off. Everything became an ad, everything felt very consumeristic and monetized. The what's in my bag, I think, is the biggest signifier of this. It used to be very relatable, funny content, then became almost a consumeristic haul of lots of things to be sold to you, likely including the buy itself. I count this as like the first wave because I think that's when people stopped feeling like influencers were as relatable, because the whole social media landscape just felt very marketable. The second wave, though, I think is going to come from AI influencers, because now there's this like added speculation of what is this real. With AI, now you've lost that relatability and the trust, and we're already seeing AI influencers popping up, and the fact is you don't always even know that that's the case.
Wow, so how are you adapting to this?
By actually earning attention. If there's a product involved, then theatre still matters, but we try to ensure campaigns contribute something meaningful, using humour, education, cultural participation. So one brand that really gets this is Currys, the electrical retailer here in the UK. Their latest campaigns lead with mini sketches and relatable humour, and the product plays a supporting role. Overall, posts feel human and not salesy. Listeners should check them out.
Yeah, I did take a look at these and I completely get where you're coming from, Shania. And what about Gen Alpha? Because, shock horror, many Gen Zs are creeping towards their late 20s. Some have kids.
Yep, well, we will see Gen Alpha's influence ramp up in 2026. So they're entering their teens and will be the lead architects in shaping youth culture. They grew up with tech in their bloodstream, and most likely they will want content that's immersive, relevant, and taps into their culture, like the 6-7 meme.
Yeah, and we should explain that. So for anyone not Gen Alpha, 6-7, which is dictionary.com's word of the year, is designed purely to confuse you.
Yeah, well, some say it means so-so, others say meh, others say maybe this, maybe that, but all I know is the whole 6-7 thing has really aged me.
What hope is there for the rest of us?
But to add even more uncertainty, yep, sorry guys, we're about to see a blanket deactivation of social media accounts belonging to all of those under 16 living in Australia. Meta, TikTok, and Snapchat have said that they will comply.
I doubt 6-7 will be the Gen Alpha response here. I'm guessing we'll get something far less ambiguous, possibly in all caps.
Now, in February, Impact Makers checked in on fragrances, and I spoke to Florence Bagneris at Osmo. Now, if you remember, Osmo is a Google venture company that's developing some pretty amazing olfactory tools that could revolutionize the way we share our lives online. Let's have a listen. So a group of friends could go away for a weekend and have the time of their lives, and between them craft a fragrance that captures the essence of that experience.
This is exactly that. The idea is to create those tools that you can bring with you, those devices. You can capture the scent around you and be able to reproduce that scent and to smell it again and again. And that scent will be very unique to the moment that you have experienced. On the contrary of buying a scent that is supposed to reproduce, for instance, the scent of the beach, that is great. You'll smell the beach, but you may not smell the beach you've been to. And those devices will be an enabler for you to capture your own scents.
So Florence, what I want to understand is AI working on a description alone, or is it tapping into the actual olfactory experience that people have at that time?
And that's a very good question. And AI can do both. So the tool that we have developed, OI, can allow you as a user to type a description, and out of that description to get a scent that will be the translation of that description. And this is something that can be done now. The teleportation that can be done, but for now only in our facilities, can allow the scent around you to be captured and reproduced, but without a description. It's really out of the physical scent. And this, we can hope in the future to have devices to enable you as a person to do that.
I mean, it's mind-blowing stuff, isn't it, Alex? The possibility that one day we'll be able to share what we're smelling as well as what we're seeing with friends and family.
Mostly pleasant prospect, I hope, Andy.
Now, you are our self-confessed frag head. My guess is that Fabulously Fragrant Futures was your highlight of 2025.
Yes, I really enjoyed making that episode. I think we've covered the subject really well, and not least because of Amy's exhaustive experience of high-end laundry detergents.
Too right.
It became very clear in our episode that fragrance is no longer just about personal scent. It's become identity, emotion, escapism.
And I thought Thomas Dunkley was really great value, our guest influencer.
Absolutely.
So let's listen back. So why do you think fragrances are having a moment right now? Is it about people wanting to be noticed more as they emerge from, the predominant digital spaces where we spend our time?
I think it's multifactorial. It speaks to a rise in individualism and also self-expression. I think fragrance has always been that final accessory that completes an outfit, and now there's simply just so much more choice. And like fashion, fragrance speaks to a person's personality and style. It's also just much more accessible now. Brands that were seen as niche 10 years ago can be found in most department stores. People don't have to travel to London to go and smell something new. And let's not forget that perfume talk is often the start of it for many people, particularly for Gen Z. That there's a realness to TikTok that we don't see on other platforms like Instagram, which is a much more curated platform. There's also an immediacy to it. So people will talk about the latest it scents and they gain traction really, really quickly. So as a result of this, fragrance is often a status symbol, particularly for younger men. With so many luxury products remaining unaffordable to the younger generation, things like cars and clothing, fragrance serves as a really good entry point to luxury. Not everyone can afford to drop $2,000 on a luxury bag, but they could save for a fragrance that's about $300, $400. I paid a visit to the Salon de Parfum in Harrods recently, and it's usually this very quiet, almost clinical space on the top floor of Harrods. And that's where they house their super luxe fragrances. And every time I've been before, it's been really quiet, almost dead. And I went a few weeks ago, and it was just packed with teenage boys, just circling around brands that you wouldn't think that teenage boys could afford. And they were really excited to smell things from brands like Xerjoff and Bodicea the Victorious, who sell fragrances between £200 and £1,000. So
wow.
It's a real change, and I think it shows how expensive fragrance has now become much more of a status symbol for young men.
So where next for fragrance, Alex?
Definitely an area to gain more attention across our industry, I think. We've mentioned AI so many times already, and in fragrance I expect to see AI making more of an impact with stuff like AI-driven scent creation, including those mood-boosting smart scents, and maybe some customized scents across 2026. And to be fair, I also hope that we'll see a continuing shift away from gendered marketing. I want it to be replaced with more of a greater focus on emotional connection. Too many brands still focus on that idea that one scent can be just masculine or just feminine.
Yeah, I would agree that brands in that area do seem to be part of an old world now. Now, look, it feels like this increased on fragrance alongside sound, of course, is further evidence that manufacturers are determined to create more multisensory products for people in the everyday.
It really does, which is exciting for this podcast, of course. It also means that we should try and return to fragrance sometime soon, maybe?
We will bear this in mind, Alex.
Regular listeners will remember our cries for help as we battled the flames in the savory snacks aisle, including the moment I willingly went on a date with the world's hottest tortilla chip and ultimately survived the infamous one-chip challenge. If you're new here, pause this, go listen to When Things Turn Sour, and then come back, emotionally prepared. It was a perfect example of sensory maximalism. Brands are pushing the boundaries of heat, flavor, texture, and honestly pure chaos to bring a jolt of novelty to the weekly grocery trip. And leading the charge was, of course, PepsiCo. Well, they've gone and done it again. To tell us what they've done this time, we've dragged away Taylor Shad from her day job and MMR Sensory Qual team, coming live to us from Philadelphia.
This one is honestly genius, Caitlin. I'm putting in a unboxing video on the Impact Makers feeds because it must be seen to be believed. First, the box is almost 3 feet long. Second, stamped across the front is the name simply NKD, short for naked. Yes, naked Doritos and Cheetos, a sentence I don't think I'd ever say professionally.
Okay, and why naked?
So this is PepsiCo's very clever, very bold response to new federal regulations requiring Big Food to remove all synthetic dyes by next year. Rather than reformulate and hope the color changes simply accepted, PepsiCo has taken a very playful response. They're launching visually toned-down versions of their most iconic snacks in December, and this box is designed to prove to the public that the taste hasn't changed. Inside, you get the Doritos nacho cheese you know, and then the exact same product without the famous orange glow. Same with Cheetos Flamin' Hot Crunchy, one classic and one simply NKD.
And longtime listeners will know what we see massively shapes what we taste.
Exactly. And PepsiCo knows it too. Their statement literally says, and I quote, "We're turning expectations upside down, removing artificial colors, not the flavor, and proving that unforgettable taste can be colorless." That's what this box is all about, a public demonstration that crunch, aroma, and flavor intensity survive, even when the neon dust does not.
So, having tried some of these products, Taylor, what's your verdict?
Upon opening the NKD bags, I was surprised by the color, or lack thereof. They're pale, light yellow, as opposed to the neon red and orange we all know. And as promised, they still pack a flavorful punch. The Flamin' Hot Cheetos bring on their signature heat that builds with every bite, and the Doritos still have the intensely cheesy and tangy flavor we all love. And the internet seems to agree. Dennis Lee on the Takeout website wrote, "Try as I might, I simply could not tell the flavor difference between the regular version of the classic Frito-Lay snacks and their dye-free Simply NKD counterparts," which honestly is high praise considering the emotional attachment people have to these snacks.
Well, the color may have faded, but no one can claim this isn't a big, bold move by PepsiCo. And releasing a giant taste text box is a genius way of telling shoppers, despite the change, nothing's changed.
Really clever stuff there. You know, how to turn a regulatory headache into an opportunity to shout about cleaner label snacking and perhaps even deepen consumer trust into the bargain. Okay, let's get back into the holiday spirit here on Impact Makers, because if you've been anywhere near a supermarket recently, or a coffee shop, or even the internet, you might have noticed gingerbread is having a moment. It's the flavor of this holiday season. And here to tell us why, we've invited back Christine Barnagaud, Product Excellence Director at MMR. Hello, Christine.
Hello, Andrew. Yes, gingerbread rise probably won't surprise our regular listeners. It's become the latest antidote to modern life. So it makes total sense that people are reaching for something comforting, especially at this time of year.
Yeah, and gingerbread really does deliver this, doesn't it? It is nostalgic. It is warm. It's basically a sensory shortcut back to what I'd like to think were simpler, happier times.
So we're going to go through 3 products, and all of those products are showcasing slightly different elements of the gingerbread flavor. So we're going to start with Doritos gingerbread.
Nice.
So what you're experiencing first when you open the bag is that lovely enveloping baking spice warmth that is really evocative of, baking gingerbread cookies. And then, of course, you've got the Doritos crunch, but you get also that sweet, salty edge that makes it really Moorish, and you want to keep going for more. So I think it really fits with, Doritos snacks. It starts with that cinnamon, sweet baking spices, and then you get the ginger kick. You get the ginger warmth developing and getting into that peppery warmth. And this is really nice because it means that it's not too sweet. You still get into something that is Moorish and snacking, and always a little hint of salt keeps you going for more.
Very nice. And if Charles was here, he would probably reference the swavery movement.
Absolutely.
Really nice. Really impressive, actually.
Yeah.
What do you got next?
So next, we have Kit Kat gingerbread flavor.
Good, because I've been looking forward to this one.
What was surprising is they've gone dark and mysterious. And that's really great because it really explores the more kind of spice mix around gingerbread baking. So cloves and nutmeg, the darker tone of the spices, that really helps the ginger and going under the black treacle kind of umbrella.
Yeah.
So it is a bit sweet, but actually then you get all of those darker tones that build up and helps balance. So it's bold, yet balanced, sweet but not too sweet, and it has that nice zing and warmth by the end.
It is bold. And, sometimes with these special editions, you get manufacturers that sort of dip their toe in the water, but they have plunged into this one. This is really good.
And this is something that really starts even from the smell. So really kudos for having captured that darker tone from the beginning.
Well done, Kit Kat. Now, lastly, the one we're not eating, I hope.
No, the one we're not eating. We're going to Trickle Moon Spiced Gingerbread Biscuit Shower and Bath Gel. So this could have gone very confectionery, very sweet and sickly.
Yeah.
And actually, from the beginning, it has that really strong spice tones in the aroma, but with the bright citrus that generally is mixed with also ginger to make it not too heavy. So it's actually very enveloping and very warm. And it's really just while you're using it, that gentle sensory hug that envelopes the skin. We're going quite zingy and fresh ginger to start with just a hint of spice. And then we finish on that sweet floral sweetness that makes it really kind of nice and calming. So I think that this is really something that is fresh and bright and quite unexpected, and something that really, if you want to have that warm hug for the skin, is something for the festive season.
Yeah, and aromatically, it just smells very natural. I'm very tempted to demonstrate this one, but I'm afraid we can't. We haven't got a shower at hand. So now look, Christine, if we could fast forward, say, 12 months and we're sitting here at the end of 2026, what might we be obsessing over then, do you think?
Yes, well, thanks very much for briefing me earlier so that I have some answers ready. So I'll have 3 contenders for 2026.
Okay.
And first, anything to do with brown butter. It's rich, it's toasty, it's sophisticated comfort. It's bringing a notch on, normal caramelized butter. So I think that that's something to watch for.
Okay, I can see that.
So second, something around toasted marshmallows. So it really is hitting this childhood outdoor gathering vibe, that cozy escapism, and it's just making that you don't need the actual campfire. It will come oven ready.
Yeah, I'm back in my Scout days,
yes.
Christine.
And then finally, we have maple and spice. So by maple and spice, we mean maple and chai or maple and cardamom. So not potentially the spices are used that much in the Western world, but are very familiar for other parts of the world. And therefore, it gives this warming yet modern take on the pairing, and it can be very versatile across granolas, bakery, tea, and even spirits and yogurt.
Wow. Well, lots more nostalgia to come. We've absolutely loved having you back for our holiday 2025 episode. We'll see you in 2026 to see if you were right. Thank you again, Christine.
No worries. Thank you very much, everyone. See you in 26.
So how do we capture the state of play as 2025 draws to a close? There is a growing sense, I think, that 2026 is shaping up to be a reckoning point for the food and beverage sector. You can feel the pressure building, can't you? That landmark Lancet report, which makes some serious allegations around UPFs. We have those weight loss medications with the power to tip a range of categories into decline. Stubborn food inflation and margins that are being squeezed from every side. Climate volatility that's pushing commodity prices ever skywards. The pesky AI agents that we've been talking about, now they're going to make click-free, decision-free shopping our next reality. And all the while, that unrelenting surge of private label products that aren't just a match for brands on quality, but actually feel more intentional. And that's a worry. So I think, with all of this considered, it would be easy to suggest that the next decade will be defined purely by constraint. But hang on a minute, because the CPG industry is endlessly adaptable, endlessly creative, and it still has the power, probably more than ever, to bring joy, meaning, connection to people's daily lives in ways that, well, no other industry, I think, can. And yes, while technology is accelerating, something deeply human is accelerating too. I think, I agree with WGSN when they say that we're entering a sort of sensorial reset. This is the moment where people are actively seeking things that help them reconnect with their senses, their emotions, other people. And this is where I think the opportunity lies for our industry, because no other industry is equipped to awaken the senses and create that real, grounded moment for people. So this is about sensory maximalism. And if brands can do that well, then even in the world before us, which is going to be ruled ever more by automation and algorithms, CPG brands won't just survive, they'll be impossible to live without.
Thank you, Andy. And honestly, he's right. The brands that choose to make people feel something again will be the ones that define what comes next. We've heard so much about the importance of value. It's why private label is on such a roll here in the US. So, if AI agents are about to take over the shopping journey, what choices will they make if value becomes the dominant filter? Because let's be honest, bots don't have emotional ties to brands. They don't grow up with the jingles in their heads. They don't reminisce about the snack their grandmother bought. They see price, pack sizes, ratings, and they optimize. So if brands don't build something meaningfully different, something sensorial, emotional, human, the algorithm will simply route around them. But as Shania pointed out, the brands that can engineer affordable affluence, that feeling of getting something special without paying a premium for it, those brands will win share. They will feel like a treat at a time when people desperately need small daily lifts. And honestly, that's where I expect to spend most of my time in 2026, helping brands amplify perceived value, helping them prove why they're worth choosing, not just once, but automatically, habitually, instinctively, even in a world where AI wants to flatten everything into the cheapest option. Shania, what have you got?
Well, if we're talking about a watch out for 2026, the big one is speed. As Andrew observed at the start, TikTok's trend cycle is now so short that even breakout hits, matcha, pistachio, and everything in Dubai, are burning out faster. Forecasting the next big thing is getting harder because virality has become almost completely novelty-driven. I'd recommend listeners check out our episode on the Discovery era. But there is a glimmer for brands, and demonstrated by that cutesy Starbucks barista cup. It shows that when you create something charming, collectible, display-worthy, and you drop it in a limited run, TikTok will do the rest. People want objects that make them smile, that feel special, and that they can show off in their desk or their kitchen.
So naturally, I get the last word, eh?
This is your big chance, Alex.
Well, firstly, can I say that I've learned so much from you guys this year? I've honestly had such a privilege to witness all these interviews we've done, all the stories we've covered, and all these amazing guests. This episode is proof, if one was ever needed, that our industry is undergoing some massive changes right now. One thing that I've picked up on is this wholesale shift towards living in the moment more. We were actually talking about this in the office recently, Andy. The thing you said about changes to experience design, it's that focus on in the moment immersion that just feels right to me.
Yeah.
And it could be why I'm increasingly drawn to fragrances, because it helps me feel something in the now.
Well, we've loved having you as our producer, Alex, and we truly couldn't do it without you. So that's all from us in a year full of surprises, some of them even welcome. We hope that we've not alarmed you too much with our reflections. This does feel like a reckoning point for so many reasons, but the role of product in all this feels central as we move ahead. Andrew might say that if your product isn't your strongest piece of brand content, do you even have a brand anymore?
Indeed, I might. But expect us to be covering developments across 2026, so stick with us. Join our LinkedIn group by searching Impact Makers. Follow us on Instagram at
Impact Makers Pod.
And if you needed any further incentive, we'll be kicking off the year with some dirty talk, checking out disruption in household cleaning, of course. So stand by for that.
So it's with intention that we say goodbye and head off to the Impact Makers Party, which has no budget either, but we wanted to do our bit for connectivity. Until next year,
Happy holidays!